Imagine a large bank wants exposure to the credit risk of 25 companies, but it does not want to actually buy their bonds. Instead, it creates something called a synthetic CDO. Let's understand this with the example given in the theory. Consider a $100 million synthetic CDO. This CDO represents exposure to 25 different bonds, each with a notional amount of $4 million. The average CD spread on these bonds is 2% per year. Therefore, the total annual spread income received by the CDO is $2 million. The originator of the CDO receives CD's premium payments from protection buyers. In return, if any of the reference companies default, the originator must compensate those losses. To distribute this risk among investors, the CDO is divided into 3 tranches: equity, mezzanine, and senior. First comes the equity tranche. This tranche represents 5% of the total CDO, which is $5 million. Since it absorbs the highest level of credit risk, it earns the highest return, around 10% per year, or $500,000 annually. The equity tranche absorbs the first 5% of all credit losses. As losses occur, the principal of the equity tranche is reduced. Once cumulative losses reach 5% of the total CDO, the equity tranche is completely wiped out. Next comes the mezzanine tranche. This tranche covers losses from 5% to 25% of the total CDO. Its size is therefore $20 million. Since it takes less risk than equity, it earns a lower return, approximately 5.625% per year, or about $1.125 million annually. The mezzanine tranche starts absorbing losses only after the equity tranche has been exhausted. It remains protected until cumulative losses exceed 5%. Finally, there is the senior tranche. This tranche represents the remaining 75% of the CDO, or $75 million. Because it is protected by both the equity and mezzanine tranches below it, it is considered very safe. Consequently, it earns only about 0.5% per year, or $375,000 annually. The senior tranche begins to suffer losses only when total portfolio losses exceed 25%. An important point to note is that the total spread income received by the CDO is $2 million per year. This income is allocated among the 3 tranches according to the waterfall structure. Each tranche receives compensation based on the level of risk it bears. Unlike a cash CDO, a synthetic CDO does not require funding to purchase bonds because no actual bonds are owned. However, if defaults occur and payments must be made to protection buyers, the investors in the affected tranches must provide the necessary funds. Typically, collateral is posted to ensure that these obligations can be met. Now that we understand the structure, let's move to valuation. There are 2 common approaches for valuing a synthetic CDO. The first is the spread payments approach, which calculates the fair CD spread by equating the present value of expected inflows and expected outflows. The second is the Gaussian copula model, which is used to model default dependence among the underlying companies. The theory here focuses on the spread payments approach. According to CD's valuation principles, the fair spread is found by equating the present value of expected inflows and outflows. For a tranche, investors receive spread payments on the outstanding principal. As defaults occur and principal falls, future spread payments also decrease. First, calculate the expected loss in each period. Expected loss equals expected principal at start minus expected principal at end. Discount these expected losses back to today to get the PV of expected loss payments, C. Since losses are assumed to occur midway through the year, midpoint discount factors are used. Next, calculate the PV of future spread payments, A, by discounting the expected outstanding principal in each period. Also calculate the PV of accrued spread, B, representing the partial premium earned before defaults occur. Therefore, PV of inflows equals spread times A plus B, PV of outflows equals C. Setting inflows equal to outflows, spread times A plus B equals C. So the break-even spread is spread equals C, A plus B. This gives the fair CD spread for the tranche. If the market uses a standard coupon instead, any difference is settled through an upfront premium.